For example, a man is going to think, well, if I marry a religious woman, that means she's going to be obedient, because the wife being obedient to the husband is part of the deen. Whereas the woman, she might be thinking, well, if I get a religious husband, then that means he's going to treat me great, because the best of you are those who are best to their wives. So if he's religious, then he's going to be the best to me, and therefore everything's going to work out, right? But if you start getting very specific about how each of us understand this term religious, how each of us understand what obedience entails, or being good to your wife entails, then you're really going to get a better picture of who you're dealing with and how compatible you are, or you at least want to know what you're getting yourself into. Some of us, we need to be realistic regarding marriage and regarding our options. Okay, you might have 100 things that you want in a spouse, but the reality is you might only be able to find somebody who's willing to marry you that fulfills 20 of those things. And you have to make a decision. Is it better for me to get married and marry this person who checks off 20 of these boxes, or to not get married? Because for some people, that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, I want to thank everybody for their participation yesterday in the Muslim marriage survey. Jazakumullahu khairan. We got lots of great feedback, and it's going to help in generating beneficial content in the future, inshallah. Today being the first video, I wanted to discuss why this is such an important topic. Firstly, when it comes to marriage, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated for human beings since Adam alayhi salam, the first man. Adam alayhi salam had a wife, Hawa. Hawa had a husband, Adam. And together they had children. And this has been the ongoing design regarding the life of this world and the human experience since Adam alayhi salam, and it will be the case up until the Day of Judgment. Also, it is of great interest to pretty much everyone, because you're either single and marriage is something that you're probably thinking a lot about, that you've probably been thinking about since you reached puberty, and to some extent at least, and it's probably something that you're going to think about up until you get married. And then for those of us who are married, marriage plays such a huge role in your day-to-day life. So whenever you want to do something, you want to learn about something, one of the very first things you should do is discuss it with people who have already accomplished it. When it comes to marriage, for example, all of you who are single, how many times have you sat with somebody who's married and really gone into detail about marriage? What marriage is like, the pros and cons of marriage, things that people have learned from being married, some of the mistakes they've made, some of the things that they've gotten right. This is something that people naturally usually want to do, is to talk about themselves and their experiences and to share information. And sometimes it's rare for people to actually want to listen. If you show your parents, your aunts, uncles, friends, colleagues, teachers, if you go to them with genuine questions about marriage, for example, and you're willing to really listen to them, okay, when they're speaking to you, you're listening and you're processing the information and you're thinking about follow-up questions, a lot of people appreciate that, and they will be completely open and happy to discuss these things with you. And it is so valuable. It can save you so much potential hardship in the future, because you learn from other people's mistakes. You learn from other people's hardship. And also keep in mind that you don't have to take everyone's advice. You can ask 100 different people about something and take what they say with a grain of salt, as they say. But, you can rest assured that if you really, truly, take the means of talking to people, you're going to find some gems. I really feel like it's important for some of the younger generation, meaning people in their 20s and 30s who are married, to also have these discussions. We have a very unique experience in terms of the influences that we've had growing up, in terms of things like feminism, technology, the way that the media has influenced our perceptions of gender role, even things like Islamophobia. We have somewhat of a unique experience when it comes to these things. And something that helped me realize that is I was talking to my grandfather yesterday, who is in his 80s. May Allah guide him and preserve him. Ameen. And as we were discussing marriage and gender roles, it just really highlighted how different things are today. That doesn't mean that we can't learn a lot from him and his generation and, our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents. The point is that we can also learn a lot from each other. And before closing, I wanted to jump into some of my thoughts specifically regarding the feedback that I got when it comes to the survey. So the majority of responses were from single brothers and sisters. So that's number one. Number two is the vast majority, almost everyone, said that one of the major factors regarding what they want in a spouse is for them to be religious. So that was number two. And then number three, the third thing that stood out was the generalities that people said they were looking for. Meaning vast majority of people were not specific at all. Although it's good to say, I want a spouse who is religious, I want a spouse who is nice, who's gentle, who has good manners. I mean, all of that, it's good. It's good that you have some direction to go in. However, I encourage everyone to try to be as specific as possible. Generalities, it's sort of like you just twisting the knob and opening the door. But you have to walk through that door, okay? And you have to really analyze everything in that room specifically, because once you get married, things are going to get very specific very fast, okay? And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So there was actually a married couple who both filled out the survey together. And I like to thank them. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah bless both of you and your marriage. Ameen. And it was very beneficial because I got to see both of their perspectives. And what was interesting is that if you remember what I asked the married couples, the third question was about what they don't necessarily like about the other person that they feel is somewhat detrimental to the relationship. So this couple, they've been married for over 10 years. Allah Mubarak. The husband said that the wife is too religious to the point that it makes their lives difficult. And the wife said that what she didn't like about the husband was his lack of religiosity, essentially, that he wasn't, fulfilling his responsibilities enough as a Muslim. So there's so many things that we can benefit from if we just think about this scenario. Number one is, what does religious mean? And this is sort of what I really want everyone to think about, because, like I said, the vast majority of people said they want somebody who's religious. What does that mean? Try to be as specific as possible. Now, obviously, we don't know the specifics of this couple, but we could imagine a countless amount of scenarios. It could be that the husband is negligent to the extent that he doesn't pray, he doesn't fast, he doesn't go to Jumu'ah. That is one extreme. And it could be that he feels like his wife is extreme herself because she prays 5 times a day and eats halal meat, right? To some people, that could be the dynamic. Or it could be that the brother, he fasts, he prays 5 times a day on time, he fulfills all his responsibilities, but his wife she does go to extremes regarding certain things and makes things unnecessarily difficult. She might hold very strict opinions that aren't even necessarily valid. There's a wide spectrum that being religious can entail. And this is why it's really important to get specific. So if you want a spouse who is religious, what does that mean? To some people, religious means she wears hijab and she prays 5 times a day. To other people, it might mean that she wears niqab, that she stays at home all day memorizing Quran, that she, volunteers and teaches at the Islamic school. So it's important for you to really get specific about these things. I think a lot of us, we just sort of assume that if our spouse is religious, then that means, for example, a man is going to think, well, if I marry a religious woman, that means she's going to be obedient, because the wife being obedient to the husband is part of the deen. Whereas the woman, she might be thinking, well, if I get a religious husband, then that means he's going to treat me great, because the best of you are those who are best to their wives. So if he's religious, then he's going to be the best to me, and therefore everything's going to work out, right? But if you start getting very specific about how each of us understand this term religious, how each of us understand what obedience entails, or being good to your wife entails, then, you're really going to get a better picture of who you're dealing with and how compatible you are, or you at least want to know what you're getting yourself into. The brother might think, well, okay, an obedient wife means anything I tell her to do, she's going to do. She's not going to argue with me about it. She's not going to give me a hard time about it, right? If I tell her, hey, I don't want you to do this, she's not going to do it. If I say, I want you to do this, she's going to do it. Whereas the woman, she might feel like obedience is, well, he's not going to ask me to do anything that I don't want to do. He's not going to tell me what to do. Maybe he'll ask me to do something occasionally, and if I agree to it, then, that's me being obedient. But if I don't agree to it and I don't want to do it, then I don't have to do it. And, he can't make me do it, and he shouldn't, be oppressive in that way. All right? Like, point being is that if a husband doesn't realize that his wife views obedience in that way, he's in for a rude awakening, right? Once they get married. And these are things that are going to happen when you're married to somebody, when you are living with them, right? So it's better to be very specific about things early on to at least know what you're getting yourself into. Now, I'm not saying everyone should be specific so that they don't marry somebody who doesn't fit their, dream spouse description, because nobody's perfect, and we all have to settle to an extent. Some of us, we need to be realistic regarding marriage and regarding our options. Okay, you might have 100 things that you want in a spouse, but the reality is you might only be able to find somebody who's willing to marry you that fulfills 20 of those things. And you have to make a decision. Is it better for me to get married and marry this person who checks off 20 of these boxes, or to not get married? Because for some people, that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. Because if you try to find somebody who fits, they're your dream spouse, you're never going to find that person, and you're never going to get married. And this is a reality of life. We have decisions that we have to make. So that's something that people also need to consider. So it's not that you want to get so specific about these things in order to reject everyone who doesn't fulfill your demands, but it's so that you at least know what you're getting yourself into, and perhaps before you get married, you can at least discuss certain things and come to certain agreements so that you're not finding out things the hard way later. Now, before closing, I also wanted to mention being good to your wife. What specifically does that entail? If there's a sister who she wants to mention this, that the best of you are those who are best to their wives, it's important for her to understand what that means to her. Because a man might think, I'm the best to my wife because I pay the bills, I help out around the house. He might think I'm the best husband ever. But to his wife, being the best might be spending a certain amount of time with her every day, doing certain things with her throughout the week, taking her out, going on vacations, buying things with her. So this is why I say it's important to be specific as possible about all of these different things that you're looking for. Because if we're not going to be specific, then the reality is, hundreds of you said that you want to marry somebody for the deen. So if it was as easy as that, then all of you should just be, easily getting married. Oh, so what are you looking for? Deen? Oh, I'm also looking for deen. Let's get married. Obviously, it's more complicated than that. So with that said, I hope that this video was beneficial. This is a major topic. Inshallah, we're going to have a lot more discussions in the future. Just to sort of summarize, this is an important discussion to have. It's part of the human condition. It's the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed this dunya for us, for men and women to get married, to have children. So it's very important for all of us to discuss. It's important that we learn from each other's experiences. That helps out a lot. And for those of us who are single, it's important to be as specific as you can regarding what you're looking for. Because if you're very general, it really doesn't help as much as you might think, because life is complicated and things will get very specific very fast once you do get married. So that is just some of my advice. Allah knows best. For those of you who have not filled out the survey, especially married couples, you are some of the ones that have some of that experience that we can benefit from, inshallah. So I really highly encourage those of you who are married, who have some thoughts and some experiences that we might be able to benefit from, to email ilminstitute@gmail.com, or you can post in the comments if it's not something too private or anything like that. And inshallah, we'll have some more videos on this topic in the future. Thank you for watching. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.